Can you explain what the difference is between the person and fiction?
The person and the fiction. Well, it's basically the same. It's exactly the same. The persona is the character, the mask that we wear. The mask is an applied mask, and the fiction is just a legally applied mask. So there's actually, if you like, there's what's the easiest way to explain it? If you, like I said, we all wear a social mask. We all go out and we dress and we wear our hair and we wear everything to how we want the world to perceive who we are. And obviously, because, like I said, because of our status, we wear stuff that maintains our status. So we kind of start to play a character in a big play. Imagine being in sort of a giant game of The Sims. It's a character. The fiction that they're using is just the application of an applied legal persona. So it's exactly the same, it's just another mask that they're adding. So you wear multiple masks. If you look at your emotions are multiple masks as well. Anger, frustration, joy, lust, desire, they're all multiple masks that you wear. So the legal world has just created another mask for you to put on, but you just don't know it exists. And you don't know, 98% of people don't even know the other masks exist. They actually believe it's this thing called a personality that comes again from the word persona. So you're wearing all this stuff. If you only have to look at advertising to see this. You only have to look at television and the way the programs are done. Take television, take acting, okay? Acting. So you take a police officer or a constable, okay? He is bound by acts of Parliament, acts. And in doing that, he's acting. But he's wearing a costume. So he's no difference to an actor on the television. Exactly the same. And what he says during his acting, what he says to you is all part of a play. And that play is the rules and regulation. That's the what you're controlled with. That's the acts of the play. Now, at the end of the day, he will go home and he'll either stop being the actor by taking the costume off and putting another costume on, which is his other mask, another mask that he wears, or certain elements of the character he was playing in the day or the night during his job will come through as traits. Like they say, once a copper, always a copper. So this is when you start to see, this is how human beings have been modelled. We've been modelled, and we're like putty, and they just mould us into what they want us to be. So they create this play called Sims or a game of Monopoly. It's a classic example. The idea of Monopoly is monopolisation. You pick a player, and then you play on the board, collecting everything you possibly can and buying properties, and then charge everybody who lands on your property the most money you possibly can. The objective of the game is to take everything from the bank. Take everything from everybody else and the bank, and you've got it all. Well, is that not the epitome of life itself in the construct we live in? But you play as a character. It's a human being moving something around the board. This mask that you wear does exactly the same. It's a character moving the human being around the board we call life, but it's not real, it's a play.
Does the government need to apply that legal fiction to somebody to make laws and legislations apply to them?
They've got two choices. If you get the average man or woman walking the street and you say to them, the law says this, you must do this, they will do it. They will just comply. No matter what, no matter how draconian it is, they will comply. So, in retrospect to what you've just asked, the answer is no, they don't have to. Because if they get someone like, I suppose like me, who's willing to ask about the morality, is to actually ask questions, then at the end of the conversation or the chat, at the end of that, if I'm still not doing as I'm told, then they'll use force. So in retrospect, they don't need the legal fiction. They're going to assert force against me. But when it comes to the paperwork that they have to go through, because their world is just all inanimate pieces of paper, that's why it's called stationary, because it can't move. It's completely inanimate. It can only move when a human picks it up and does something with it. But because their world is bound by tick-a-box nation where appropriate, because they have to tick all boxes where appropriate, and because it's bound by pieces of paper, then the legal fiction comes into it. Because if you do not give your name, then they've got no name to write. And the first stage of the contract they're trying to form by every piece of paper they give you, because if you sign it and they sign it, it's a contract. Because that hasn't got a name on it, then it's not valid.
So they need a name.
They have to have a name. And that's why they're so progressive and so forceful about your name. 90% of officers come up to you, or constables, policemen, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't matter, they're all basically the same thing. When they come up to you, the first thing they'll say, your name. Then they'll need your address, because they need to know where the slave lives, and they need to know when the date the slave was created. This is joinder. But a lot of that is data protection. They have to have and that's why when a debt collector rings you up and they say to you, your name, and then they'll confirm your date of birth, then they know if they do not go through this process of joinder and they start talking about certain elements that they're not meant to be talking about with a stranger, they have to confirm it's you. Because if they don't go through that process and they start talking about it, you've got them. You can legally nail them to the wall through the Data Protection Act.
What's the difference between a policeman and a police officer?
I would like to feel that there is a massive difference. The original Bobbies I remember when I was a kid had compassion, they had discretion, and they generally wanted to be your friend, and they generally wanted to help you as well. And I have a lot of really, really good experiences as a teenager growing up who was getting in a lot of trouble with the police. One of my dearest friends at the time was a copper out of Stevenage Station called Mick Reed. Mick used a lot of discretion. He could have nicked me a lot of times that he never did. What he did is he kind of took me under his wing and kind of showed me a lot of compassion, a lot of friendship, and helped me. He helped me a great deal. He could have just nicked me and thrown me in the cells. But he knew that wouldn't solve the issues. I was a very mixed up child. I had all this crap running through my head even at a very, very early age. I knew there was something horrifically wrong with the place that I lived. I didn't want to be here. I've never wanted to be here. I still say to this day that I'm in a prison. This is a prison. This vessel I walk about in is a prison. It's a prison within a prison. But that's a whole different story, and we shouldn't really go down that way because that's quite involved. It'd take a long time and all. No, so Mick showed me something that was called discretion. He had the ability, and at that time, the police did have discretion. But nowadays, they use ANPR machines in cars that eliminate discretion. The machine says, not taxed, no insurance, nick him. And that's what they do. Now, I recently had this on a motorbike that I've got, which is in bits actually. But I had a motorbike and I got it running. I was chuffed. I'd never done anything like this before. Gone out for a blast on it. I had insurance, but there was no tax. I'd only literally gone round the block. Whoop! Behind me, two coppers. Two they were nice actually. One of them was a lovely bloke. One of the coppers stood there and just wanted to talk about the bike because of what it was. The other one wanted to go through all the rigmarole and the protocols. So I kept sat on the bike. It's a very important thing. If you're ever pulled up on a bike, always keep sat on it. Very important indeed. Same as if you're ever pulled up by the police in a car, get out and lock the car.
What's that?
Because I need a warrant to open it. I can't open it. I can't force entry. Not allowed to. Need a warrant. It's your property. Second you step out of it, it's like your house. They need a warrant. Unless they can get your permission. If you say no, they need a warrant. They will tow it, and they will get a warrant, and they will go in it. So you're kind of delaying the inevitable, but it's facts. They can't touch your property without your permission. They're not allowed to.
Okay, James.
In your talk, The Illusion, you talk about certain legislations. The police require your consent for them to uphold those legislations. Can you elaborate on that?
Originally, when I was looking at this stuff, I was going along the lines of consent, and the biggest thing that we found out through using Black's Law Dictionary and a number of other law dictionaries. The Oxford's one, there's a Cambridge one as well, but I've never looked at. But the Oxford one and Black's Law is that we found out that a statute or legislation is only applicable, it's given the force of law by your consent. So basically what it was saying was that if you consented to it, it became law because you were giving it the force of law by saying yes. But that only applies to the club. That doesn't apply to us. And this is what I had to, that's what I'm saying. When I did the illusion, it's an illusion, I really didn't know what I was delving with. I didn't know how far down the rabbit hole I'd have to go to actually say to me, to actually come out of it and say, well, actually, that's not right. And one of the greatest attributes I've probably remembered through doing what I do is that there is no shame in holding your hands up and saying you were wrong. Because if you can't say you're wrong, you're like water, and water becomes stagnant if it's still. But if it's a river and it's flowing, then you're always flowing, the amount of energy that a flowing river's got. And that's, I'm trying to flow now instead of being stagnant. So I don't want to get stuck in one box. Yeah. And it's basically a load of boxes that you jump in and out of until you get back to the same point you started and realise you didn't have to do none of it. So yeah, if you're a member of the club, then yes, definitely.
The members of the club?
The church. Church are definitely the members of the club. There is a club. They even have black corporate credit cards that don't have to be paid back, taken from the National Insurance Fund. And depending on their status or their standing is depending on how much credit they get. But the credit doesn't have to be paid back. It comes out of the National Insurance Fund.
Do you think that people know that the church runs this country? Hundreds of years ago, it was common knowledge that the church were in charge. But do you think people know today how much influence the church has on?
It's not an influence, it's direct. It's absolutely direct. Governments and church, the church and forms of government are one and the same vessel. And when I say vessel, a prison's a vessel. A vessel is something that human beings are legally committed to. And the church knew over hundreds of years that faith or religion or belief systems come with choice. They know that. It comes with choice. You don't have to believe. And they could never ever enforce a law that would say that you have to, because there would be carnage. They knew this, because there's always far less controllers than there are controlled. And it's a numbers game at the end of the day. That's all it is, a numbers game. So what they devised was a system where you couldn't say no. And that's government. Now, if you look at, I've had a lot of people disagree with this, but I know, funny enough, I was talking to someone recently about this. It's generally the older generation that you need to talk to get this information. But if you talk to them, the two things that were frowned upon and they were told never to talk about were politics and religion. And the reason they don't want you to talk about it is because if you talk about it enough, you'll suddenly realise you're talking about exactly the same thing. Even though it's named by two completely different names, you're talking about one and the same. And then you would actually come to remember that they are one and the same. You don't have to be told anything. You know all of this already. It's already written. It's already written in a place that you just can't access because you believe, or most of us believe, we are this person, this persona, this mask, this character that blocks inherent information or memories. I would call it memories more than information, that's come down through centuries of ancestry. They knew this was going to happen. They had to block it. But unfortunately for them, or very fortunate actually, because I'm sure now that they're actually sick and tired of this. They want rid of this as much as we do, because it's got to the stage that they can't control it anymore. They can't keep going and going and going, because in the end it's just going to end up with their own demise. And the only way to ever actually end this is to have the ability to offer everybody amnesty. See, we're taught through history that the only way to sort any problem out is via a feudal means or conflicts, which is one and the same. We're never shown the positives, ever. History is full of negatives, full of wars and we defeated that, and we defeated this, and nationalism. It's all negatives, absolute negatives. We are of one family. All right, we look different, we talk different, we come from different parts of this planet. But yeah, obviously, if you've got people growing up in one place that's really, really hot, then they're going to evolve to be able to cope with that. But that doesn't make us a different, they're not now a separate family, they're still all part of the same family. All right, yeah, we're unique parts of the same family. But that's what our greatest strength is that uniqueness. Because when we learn to accept or remember that it's okay to accept uniqueness, there'll be no more problems.
How much